My name is Chanelle Goldson, and we're here with Getting Real with Real Estate. Today, we're going to talk about the impacts of the housing shortage and how it impacts buyers, sellers, and renters. So, let's get into how it impacts sellers because sellers are on top when it comes to this market and housing shortage. Why? Because there's high demand and low inventory. And what that means is that sellers have the upper hand when it comes to negotiation only because there's not much inventory to choose from. So that's how it impacts the seller in a positive way for them. It's a win for them in this season. When it comes to buyers, they're at a slightly disadvantage. It doesn't mean that you can't win in this market. It just means that you're going to face some challenges. Maybe it'll take you longer to find a home, or whereas it could take before it would take within a month you'll be closed on your home. Maybe it'll take a year. So we're seeing that increase in the time it takes to find a home only because the inventory is so low. And some people altogether give up because they just don't, there's nothing out there within their budget and their needs. So it has like a negative impact on buyers, but you can overcome it. And especially it's depending on some markets. Some markets have more inventory than others. And when it comes to renters, the housing shortage has negatively impacted them in so many different ways. That's why we're seeing a rise in homelessness because the affordability of renting is just not there. A few years ago, renting a home was way less expensive than owning a home. Now, in our market, it's either at the same amount or even less to be a homeowner. So if you could buy, it would be the time to buy because you're spending so much more in rent. And with renters, with the housing shortage, now it became this very, very competitive market where for some homes you get interest. I have a property that we're renting out, and there were 100 individuals who were interested in this unit. We had an open house. Out of the 100, we had about 30 people show up. Within 30, we had about 7 applicants. So the landlord has 7 qualified applicants to choose from. So you see how competitive that can be just to rent a home. So, and then think about it. If you've ever had an eviction, if you fallen on hard times financially, you have any kind of bankruptcy and collections or things like that, it makes your application less appealing to a landlord, which makes it very, very hard to find housing. Then the quality of the homes on the market that you have older homes that haven't been renovated. And if it's something that's newer, you're paying high end for a newer home. And so the reasons why we have the shortage is because zoning regulations are very strict, and especially some areas to build. Rising construction costs. It's very expensive to build. In Connecticut, we're not seeing a lot of new builds go up because it's so expensive to build. Now, places like Texas, South Carolina, Georgia, they're building like crazy, and builders are giving incentives. So if you want to go to those places, you'll get new homes anywhere from 300 to 375 for a brand new home. But you come to Connecticut, for that amount, you're getting a smaller Cape Cod style home. So that's like a 3-bedroom home, maybe 1 to 2 baths. If you get 2 baths, you're pushing further to like 400,000. So it's just for us, we're feeling the shortage even more so in Connecticut because we're not seeing new builds. Another reason why there's a shortage, some areas have a lot of people coming in from other areas. So there's more demand on the market for both buying and renting. So how do you overcome these challenges in the housing market? Well, one, if you're a renter and you're having difficulty finding a place, if it's because of eviction, if it's because of financial hardships, affordability, maybe getting with an organization that they provide subsidies or they provide assistance with locating homes and finding landlords who are socially conscious. So what that means, I talked about this in another podcast, where investors who are more apt to give you a chance, who are willing to work with you and not just shut you out if your credit score isn't 650. They're more willing to take in consideration, okay, you have steady income, you're trying to better your life, then I have a rental for you. So some of these agencies have a list of landlords that are willing to work with folks and are more socially conscious. I'm on one of them, and so if you ever need information, feel free to reach out to me, and I could provide that information. But so working with these agencies that could help you, maybe looking for additional sources of income, maybe finding renting with other like-minded people who you can share the expenses, living expenses. That's another way to do it. I'm seeing a lot of folks going back to renting rooms or just shared living, and we're seeing a lot of multi-generational homes. And so with that, families are getting together, they're buying a home and they're renting out to their family or just allowing their family to stay there, but they're sharing the expenses of living. So that's a way to make it as well, in this market with this high cost of living. And then when it comes to buyers, you just want to make sure you know what you can afford, and that you're not giving up too, because eventually there'll be a home on the market for you. And then with our legislators, calling your legislators and saying, hey, we need to do something about zoning. We need more new bills in our community. So seeing what your zoning boards are doing, going to those meetings and advocating for more housing, more affordable housing. So those are some of the things you can do. But, it's hard, but you have to stay optimistic and you have to create a plan to move forward. So we're all feeling the impacts of the low volume and the low inventory in the housing market. So I just listen, I'm done. Sorry, I was just saying because I think I was done and trying to force more out. Okay.
What you think will be a clean
Ending.
finishing thought for you?
Okay.
And then
The impacts of housing, impacts of the impacts of the housing shortage. Okay. So in conclusion, no, I don't want it as an essay. Sorry. So when it comes to the housing shortage, some things that we need it at a legislative level. We need more bills. We need more of our legislators advocating for affordable housing, advocating for new building, and more incentive for builders. Because if we're not creating more housing, we're only going to see the shortage increase. So what you really need to do is, one, vote people in office who are for affordable housing and who are for making sure that we're getting what we need when it comes to housing, and then that you're attending these meetings, these board meetings, these government meetings, zoning meetings, so that your voice is heard. So you want to make sure that we're advocating for more housing, which we need, and that's the answer.